What's up, losers? Usually I start these videos a bit more softly, but I'm not talking to you, my lovely viewers. I'm talking to you. Yes, you, my opponents. See, I know for a fact that my opponents watch my videos, and what better way to flex than by ranking every single one of their teams right in front of them. Hi, hello, Vinny and Dragon here, and welcome to the MMC Power Rankings. I have some traditional plugs to get out of the way first. I'm trying to get to 100 subs by the end of the year, and I really appreciate the help. Also, a huge shout out to all the other people who are making content on this league, though all their channels will be linked below. With all that said and done, let's get into what I believe is the worst team of the draft and why. At 14, I think most of us have the Baltimore Blastoise here pretty safely. This team is pretty solid, but that's about it. Solid. It's kind of like in those really poorly balanced fighting games where everyone is broken, except Tip. He has nothing really on his team that warrants any fear from me. Jolteon and Heracross are some solid mid-tiers, but not what your entire offense should be built around. If you were forced to run an offensive Iron Treads, I think you're doing something wrong. Same with Clefable. These are niche sets these Pokemon can run, but because of the way you built your team, you either outstall the enemy or run things like Choice Band Iron Treads, which I just don't see as viable strategies. Terra Zangoose is absolutely awesome and one of my favorite bad Pokemon, but it's not winning you more than one game. Overall, the stall potential is lacking too. Both of your regenerators are weak to Toxic, and Iron Treads is your only way of removing hazards. No ice or flying means that even with Levitate, your team is very, very ground weak. At 13, I had something that might be a little surprising. After some discussion, I agree that the next team is Washington Whimsicott. This team is incredibly weak to hazards, as while Talonflame and Blastoise are solid removal, your rock weakness is absolutely ridiculous. Boots on every single Pokemon is a fine substitute, but so many Pokemon like Dragonite, Ninetales, and Baxcalibur love holding items, and they're very limited from how deeply you went into Snow. I think Annihilate is something you desperately needed, but even with him, people aren't really deterred from flicking close combat into your team just for free. I think that the highs of this team are very high, as all of the Pokemon here are good with the exception of some of your low tiers like Vikavolt. You just overloaded the box on a gimmick in my personal opinion. But shout out to Iron Boulder going undrafted. This was absolutely massive for you. Next, for the number 12 slot, I think we're already at the point where most teams are pretty solid and have great matchups. I think that the Pheonix Incineroar's Rain team is actually a pretty good example of that. No, I'm not just hating on the weather teams, I actually have some solid reasoning. First of all, I think that no ice or fire type is a massive deal. Hell, I think a fire type is a type you want to even double up on. Sure, you're a rain team, but defensive fire types are still very good even on rain teams where water moves are boosted. Because you have so many water resists, you have things that love to switch in even if you are threatened by an offensive water type in the rain. This team specifically only has Fortress for removal, which, while it has a ton of good hazard pressure itself, it doesn't have a single fogger, and can only click Rapid Spin and be blocked. Your team definitely has a ground plus ice weakness, but you may must run one undrafted, so that's fine. But you are hella Freeze Dry weak. I mean, that's only really relevant for Iron Bundle and Kyurem, but it's still something to keep in mind. At number 11, I have the Tri-State Porygons. No ice type is really just a recurring theme of this draft, but more recurring is the fact that this team actually does have phenomenal hazard control. Speed tiers are a bit worrying as you have a ton of Pokemon around the exact same speed, but Greninja is a great Pokemon to have as your fastest Pokemon. And I didn't know until I was writing the script, but Dodrio's the same speed as Latios. Anyway, I do think you have a bit of a fairy problem. Arbok isn't exactly real, and Bronzong is already the defensive backbone for a lot of other types. Which just reminds me, Game Freak, when are we getting a Fire Fairy or Fairy Ground? I mean, they would be great. Anyway, lamenting aside, Freeze Dry is a problem again, and even worse this time, plus most of your special attackers aren't true wall breakers. Sylveon and Manaphy and Greninja are amazing Pokemon, but all of them like to set up before they really get going. And while they can hold a Scarf or a Life Orb, just going for damage isn't exactly utilizing them to their fullest potential. Number 10, I have the Navy Seals. No grounded poison is unfortunate, but you could be happy as Great Tusk is one of the best spinners, and Corviknight actually kept Defog in this gen. This team is really boring, so there isn't much to talk about, but it has a lot of overlapping weaknesses for a stall team. A flying, fairy, ghost, ice, and fire problem. I would have mentioned Rock too, but I don't really care. But on a plus side, this team does have Gliscor. Number 9 is Sand Time. The Lake Acuity Absols put together, in my opinion, the best weather team in this draft. Maybe terrain is actually better than weather. That's a topic for another video. Anyway, having Excadrill as your only form of removal is horrendous, and while Qwilfish is a grounded poison, it can't come every week. Especially since your team is already weak to ground. Your team is also incredibly weak to Ghost and Dark, and your only resistance to Ghost has a quad weakness. Sure, you can run like Choppleberry to deal with random fighting coverage, but every week? I don't really buy it. Plus, Iron Valiant, while it does quad resist Dark, it hates being knocked off and losing its choice item or life orb, etc. Your fire weakness is also pretty bad, but Flash Fire Chandelure and having plenty of good ground and rock moves to throw out makes me kinda count it a little less. But yeah, did you really need Frostlass and Chandelure? Kinda seems like doubling up. Also, give me back Calyrex, I really like that guy. At number 8, I have the Bristol Darkquazas. Kinda crazy how good this team is, and it doesn't even cross the halfway point. I already did review this team in my short series, which you could see in the iCard, but to sum it up, this team is good. It hits really hard, and it has access to Samurot's Hazard Pressure, but it lacks some key typings and cores that would make me put the team any higher. Number 7, I'm gonna place this after some deliberation, but next is the New York Garchomps. This team is definitely a snooze fest, but it's undeniable how good it is. Garchomp into Golden Go was a phenomenal use of a wheel pick. It is awesome that this team doesn't fall into the thing I keep criticizing teams for, which is not having key typings. But are we being serious with Rapid Spin Cryogonal? Sure, the hazard pressure it places itself is phenomenal, spin blocking from Golden Go, hazard stacking, webs from Rabombi, but if you want to clear hazards from your side of the field, you gotta play a 5v6. Not to mention your ghost resistance and immunity are both horrible, and weak to fighting. And without sticky webs, your team isn't very fast. Rabombi is 120, sure, but it isn't very threatening, and Ogerpon is 110, but it can't hold the Scarf. 105 Cryogonal and 102 Garchomp are pretty easy to outpace. Number 6, I have the Haus of Maus. Again, I already covered this team, but I'll sum it up for you. Lackluster typing cores, but amazing speed, decent hazard setting and removal, but a lack of knockoff switch-ins. The matchup dependency is very strong with this team, as I think the offensive pressure from Psychic Terrain will be too much to handle for certain teams. However, if they have the right Pokemon, they can just slide right through your defenses. I think my initial ranking is fair, but I've moved you up a bit after watching your most recent video, which you can check out again in the iCard or in my playlist. Number 5, I have myself, the Despair Duskulls. A bit egotistical, huh? I've already talked about my own team twice now on the channel, so I'm not going to rehash the same arguments. Instead, I'll let you stare into Swana's eyes for 5 seconds. Number 4 is the place I decided to move the Team Plasma Porygons to. This is where we start getting into the what the fuck tier. Iron Bundle and Urshifu are a deadly combination, and absolutely steamrolling through everything in sight. Plus for defenses, there is Landorus Theory and Mence, which could be defensive or offensive. You know how I kept saying, this team doesn't have an ice type over and over and over through the early tiers? This is why I rank this team so highly. A team that I initially saw as matchup dependent, I slowly realized just won every matchup. A lot of people in the draft don't have the tools required to deal with what Kenny's bringing every week. Plus his top tiers aren't even where it ends, as Iron Crown and Electric Terrain could be a real problem, and Galarian Weezing offers a ton of versatility and can even turn off Electric Terrain for the opponent's own Iron Pokemon. Plus, like I always say, Crocolore is the Zacian answer. Number 3 is the San Francisco Serperiors. Tinglu into Tornadus is really just a win button people refuse to acknowledge, and aside from that, you have access to Ogerpon Horrorflame, my darling who carried me through last season. Not to mention having access to Deoxys Speed, one of the few good Pokemon that's able to outspeed things like Dragapult and Iron Bundle. I could absolutely see another win in Elking's future with this team. In second place, I decided to go with the Claire Kingdras. What isn't there to like about this team? Well, Darkrai for one, but even I think that even though he's fraudulent, he's undeniably strong. Having access to tons of Pokemon on the team who support his weaknesses, like Galarian Slowking, who's a defensive coordinator, makes a lot of sense. Silstar and Quaquaval are always the best mid-tiers in every draft, and Ogerpon was criminally underrated at 12 points. There really isn't much to hate on with this thing, except one little thing. Bit of a side note here, where is everyone's ice type? Like seriously, Weavile replacing Darkrai and then getting another special attacker would have put this team at 1, 100%. Like, did I miss a memo? Did people just go like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we just didn't draft ice types this draft? Like, Weavile and Mamoswine both just didn't get drafted. Me and Kenny are just the only ones with top tier ice types with Kyurem and Iron Bundle. Like, just where'd everyone go? Anyway, we're moving on to the number 1 team. In first place, I have the Lokix Scouts. What the hell, man? Roaring Moon and Terapagos are some of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. Pair that with multiple setup sweepers like Lilligant and Azumarill, and you have a major issue. Not to mention Hariyama, which could punch holes into your team, and even if you think you outspeed, Regieleki is the fastest thing in the draft. Bar none. Skarmory and Sandaconda are a solid defensive backbone, which could help switch into things very effectively, and Iron Moth will just steamroll games with a Choice Scarf set. This is the hyper offense team I wish I built. Anyway, these have been the MMC Season 4 Power Rankings. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. This script took a lot of effort, but I enjoyed making it. Special shout out to everyone who's been supporting these past few videos, it genuinely means a ton. I really hope I have fun with the season, and I really want to chase my first major draft win. Anyway, I'll see you guys for week 1. Get out of here.